If you're a regular viewer of my channel, you may have noticed that a certain video series has been abruptly and inexplicably discontinued, much to the dismay of 12 people. I am, of course, referring to the Shitbox, an $86 Canadian PC that has a GTX 560 Ti in it and a Phenom 2 925, I think, something like that, some quad-core, some kind. Anyway, I stopped doing those videos on purpose for two reasons. Number one user said, I can watch any asshole voiceover game footage. Go back to the hardware. And number two, the last few games that I played were giving me like marginally passable results. And I started to think to myself, maybe it's time to retire the fucking thing. But I'm not quite ready to put it to bed yet. So by my math, today's video will make this the 10th in the Shitbox series. I think it's going to be the last one depending on the results, which I have not done yet. Usually when I film these videos, I do the desk stuff all at once, and I do the meat of the video, whether it be building the system or fucking putting it together first, so I have an idea in my mind of what happened and how all this is going to play out. That has not happened, because it is presently 9 p.m. on fucking Friday, which is less than 24 hours from my usual upload time, and I still haven't loaded all the games onto it, because games these days are fucking huge. All this considered, I wasn't just going to do any old Shitbox video. I was going to do something that was a little different, a little bit special. And being that we are mid-Steam summer sale, I figured this would be a good opportunity to update my benchmarking suite. So I have a few more modern games to run and show you guys on all the computers I build. And it'd be a good opportunity to put the Shitbox to the test and see if, for real and for true, it has finally had its day and it's time to retire it. So today we're going to be looking at Rise of the Tomb Raider, Doom, Total War Warhammer, Ashes of the Singularity, and Black Desert Online, just to get an MMO in there, and see how all 5 of those games run on the Shitbox and decide whether or not it's time to put this fucker in the bin or not. First up, let's take a look at some Doom. $19.99 Canadian funds in the Steam store right now during the summer sale. I'm not very good at first-person shooters, so forgive me if all I do during this little scene here is walk around and shoot guys in the face. I would give you guys some slicker footage, but I'm 37 years old and this isn't really my kind of scene. Anyway, how does it perform? Well, it performs. At least there's that. It does run. It does run at playable frame rates for the most part. We will be ranging between 25 and the high 40s throughout this scene here, which happens to be arcade mode single player, by the way, and with the settings at the absolute lowest. The GPU utilization, as you can see, will be at or near maximum. The VRAM utilization is going to be comfortably under the 1 GB of VRAM that this card allows, but still not much room left to breathe there. CPU load distribution is good across all 4 cores. Actually, surprisingly good. That's the one element of this game's performance that I had absolutely no trouble with. On the downside, the only option for you in terms of APIs is OpenGL 4.5 because Vulkan is not compatible with 500 series cards. In fact, I tried to force it anyway, and the game just crashed and wouldn't load, and I had to go into the config files and change it, so fuck that. This is about what I would consider to be the absolute most that I would stress a system like this. Doom is probably the line that you draw. Anything more intense that comes out after this, not so much. And as the games go on, I think you're going to see exactly why I am making that sort of claim. Next up, for $27.99 Canadian funds, once again, you can get Rise of the Tomb Raider. Now, Rise of the Tomb Raider is a great game for me because it has a canned benchmark, and that allows me to be super fucking lazy. Anyway, first I ran the canned benchmark on medium preset because I thought, well, you know, Tomb Raider I could run on like very high plus ultimate in some cases on some really shitty systems and it would do quite well. So maybe this game wasn't all that much more graphically intense, and it's only 3 years or so that's passed since the first one was released, but oh my god, was I ever wrong. Medium does not play well with this. I was technically able to maintain an average of about 30 frames per second throughout the course of the entire benchmark, but as you can see, there are some scenes in this that were just atrociously bad. Like, it would dip down into like the 4s and 5s and just stutter like a fucker, and just was not acceptable. So then I decided to switch it down to the lowest possible settings, and the VRAM demand lightened up a bit. We went from being a maxed out 1 point whatever the fuck megabytes down to like 850, and things were more manageable. CPU and GPU utilization were still all hovering around 100%. The bottleneck itself would switch from scene to scene. Sometimes the CPU would be underloaded, Sometimes it would be overloaded, but needless to say, the entire system as a whole was being stressed to its maximum. Now, the one thing I don't like about this setup is the object pop-in on the lowest settings. Now, I understand that's the sacrifice that you make, but as far as I know, I mean, draw distance is supposed to be the kind of thing that, you know, decreases and scales linearly, right? Like, the objects in the distance are the ones that get cut first, and the ones that are up and close to you are the ones that are supposed to actually get drawn. But as you can see throughout this benchmarking run, there are objects that I'm standing almost underneath, and they still haven't appeared yet, as where there are lots of objects in the distance that already have. So I'm not sure exactly what that's about. I'm not a developer, I can't give you any insight. But let's just put it this way. Although this game runs at lowest, on the lowest preset, and it runs at perfectly playable frame rates without a hell of a lot of problems and stuttering, you gotta get used to that. For about 25 bucks, you can get yourself Total War Warhammer. Not a hell of a lot to say about this game. CPU load balancing was fantastic. GPU utilization up at 100% the whole run. VRAM just right under that 1 GB cap, and performance is relatively smooth on the lowest possible settings, giving you frame rates between 35 and 42 without a hell of a lot of stuttering and dipping. So if you can tolerate those kinds of settings, then the Shitbox would be a good pairing for you in this game. Not quite up to PCMR standards, but you get what you pay for. For 22 Canadian dollars, you can get yourself Benchmark of the Singularity, which nobody actually plays, but yeah, who the fuck knows. If you want an example of what bottlenecking looks like, this would be it, although I can't exactly tell where the bottleneck lies in this scenario. Now, you might be saying to yourself, well, of course you know where it is. The CPU is at 100% across all 4 cores, and the GPU is down into the 40s in some cases. It's clearly a CPU bottleneck, but that might not necessarily tell the whole story, as the VRAM cap of 1 point some odd gigabytes on this card is completely full, and the game actually recommends 2 at a minimum, bare minimum, and warns you of that ahead of time before you actually load the game. And in fact, the game actually crashed once before I could get this to run. So even if you had a better CPU, I don't think this graphics card as a whole, as a product, would be able to handle it. The GPU itself, and maybe if you could get a hold of the 2 GB version of the 560 Ti, you might be fine. But otherwise, oh man, never passed 24 frames per second once. Absolutely atrocious. I can't in good conscience recommend this to anyone with a system even remotely close to this in terms of performance caliber. Absolute abysmal fail. Go fuck yourself, Ashes of the Singularity. And for the record, this was the GPU-intensive benchmark, not the CPU one, which makes it just all the more unbearable. Last but not least, I included Black Desert Online for a couple of reasons. Number one, it was gifted to me by a viewer who gave it to me along with a bunch of Steam cash to purchase some of the other games in this video on the condition that I continue to make good content, so thank you to him. He wanted me to keep his name out of it, so I will. And secondly, I included it because it seems to be the MMO du jour. It seems to be the one that everyone's picking up and everyone's playing, and for good reason, because the combat is actually really badass for an MMO. It feels like a real good, skill-centered, oriented, third-person kind of game, which is unusual for an MMO. Usually it's just click your target, go through your damage rotation, and be bored for 8 hours at a time. Anyway, in terms of how it performs, this is a bit of an oddity. So it's obviously not the most graphically intensive game. I have it on the lowest settings, and as you can see, we have CPU utilization hovering between the 30s and 50s across all 4 cores, so good load balancing at least. Core 1 seems to be a little heavy, but nothing you can't deal with. And the GPU is under 100% consistently throughout the entire stretch of this run that I did. VRAM, lots of room there. The system RAM is fine. It appears that there's something holding your graphics card back, but I can't really tell what it is. Now, while the game does work, we're not exactly in a very multiplayer heavy area, and when there's a lot of bodies on the screen, I expect this system is going to have a bit of trouble, considering that we're not getting past like 50 frames per second even here in the starting area. So probably not a good sign of things to come. So as you can see, people, the news is not good. It might be time for the Shitbox to hit the shit bin. What'll actually probably happen is the graphics card will come out, it'll get sold to the highest bidder who needs something for maybe like esports or lighter games, and then the motherboard, processor, and RAM will probably stay as a combo and go into a grandma machine for web browsing or whatnot. So the Shitbox is not entirely dead, but it's gonna have to come apart. But what this does do is afford me the opportunity to take my $100 or less idea and apply it to a brand new system for a Shitbox version 2.0 that'll probably just go in the same case with the same power supply. So who the hell knows? Stay tuned for that. And once again, a big shout out to the gentleman who gifted me $50 cash for my Steam wallet to buy some of these games, as well as Black Desert Online, which I will be personally playing probably. It's going to be my next obsession, I think, I hope, because it does seem pretty goddamn good, and I would welcome you all to come see my character. She's got great. Follow me on Twitter @Ofa. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.